Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Success is Complicated podcast. I am your host, Raquel.
And I am your co-host, Sierra.
So I'm going to tell y'all why we're laughing really quick. Because I had just said, can we pause and start all over? I feel like we jump right into the topics. We don't say, hey, how you doing? How's your week been? But the truth be told is we talk to each other like every day.
Every day.
Every day. So, but I felt like we should say, how was your week?
Oh, okay. Well, let's get into it. I had a really good week.
You had a really good week?
I had a really good week.
You did?
My kids had a track meet yesterday. How was Friday? Friday was pretty chill. I've been fasting.
You don't consider Monday through Thursday your week?
No, I was trying to go backwards.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I've been fasting this week. It's been going good. It's been going good. Yesterday I felt a little tired from it, but other than that, I had a great week. How was your week?
It's good. I had a good week too. I started working out with Sierra. She gets up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. She goes into the gym. And the plan was to do cardio only. And I decided, just doing the most, I want to go ahead and start doing some squats so I can get my legs right, because these some spank tight, so they like kind of bring everything together. So, but I've been hurting all week. And I think, because I look at this, I get on the scale like 50,000 times a day.
And I don't get on the scale at all.
I get up there like 50,000 times a day. And I think because I may have gained a little bit of muscle from doing them little squats like that fast, that is messing with my number. So I'm not going to do no squats for a while, because I need a number that I need to see on the scale mentally. Right. I'm not, man, my body felt like I got hit by a truck. Like and I know, like, Jackie, if she listens to this episode, she was like, well, you might as well come on to boot camp on Friday since you're up. And I was like, I'm not ready. She's like, there's never a good time. Well, right now it's not the time for me but I've had a good week though. I took Caden, of course, always has soccer on the weekend, and I took Cam to his first birthday party.
He was looking so cute
yesterday, so that was fun. But let's jump into the topic, because what was fun to me this week was, out of nowhere, I decided to record a video and said, let me tell you why I think the adult version of you needs the adult you and not some form of your inner child. And it has gotten like a lot of attention, which tells me that people don't want to be worked with as if they're a child. Like the youth development versus adult development.
I think people see that post and they looking for the kids and other people.
What you mean?
Like, did they like, do they show it like this? Oh yeah, they're a kid. Yeah.
Oh, so making a distinction between what makes you a child and what makes you an adult.
Well, not really. They're a kid, but like, is someone behaving like an adult per se?
Right. Because I mean, nobody really knows, right? Because we know that age, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't really mean anything.
That just got that way when like I moved here.
No,
no, seriously, all my life at 18, you've been grown. Like, point blank.
So when your kid Neek is not too far from turning 18.
See, it changed when I got here. I learned some other things.
What you learn?
I seen some other things, right? To where at 18 you don't necessarily get put out. At 18 you're not forced into adulthood because you really, really still need a village.
I think we always need a village, but the truth
is
you
still need some guidance, and you may need some help to grow into the best version of you. I think if it's put off on you to just
figure it out
at 18, I think that creates a lot of pressures to where we can't grow into our best selves. But and I mean, I've talked to someone who's like, at 18, I was told I need to go to the military, I need to go to college, or I need to find a job. And they said I didn't really feel like I fit into any of those places. So where, like, I felt like I was just like
lost
out on a cliff.
Right. No, I think that's a good point. Let's talk about the mindset of like a 18-year-old. Because early onset, right? If we're making a distinction, a part of that was the other piece that I said in the clip, right? Was today, because our training as a therapist, right? A lot of it is rooted in children and adolescents. Okay. And you remember when I would call you and be like, I'm frustrated. I don't know why I was frustrated like half of the time. But I felt like as we continue to listen to, or, they're teaching you these skills, or you're learning this additional education, like there was never a framework for adults. Like you were very clear that your children, like these are important developmental milestones. These are the things that you can expect to see. And there was never like a space for adult development. And what I tell people is today, when like you, I, or people within our generation are going back to like going to therapy to fill in these gaps, we're filling in the gaps emotionally. We're going to try to understand our feelings, figure out how to express those feelings, fully accept them, while also understanding them. And that's just one form, right? Like if you spend your entire adulthood like focusing on emotional development, it doesn't open up space for anything else. More importantly, cognitive development. So you looking at me like, why you looking at me like that? Okay, let me keep on going. So let's go to the cognitive development part, because you're talking about 18, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna just turn this way while she
No, don't turn. No.
And let's see.
So let's talk about it, right? Because at 18 years old, first of all, there is a such thing as adult development. I don't know if people dive into it because that's just what we're presented with, but there is a such thing as adult development. I will say that the more that you get into it, it can get a little complicated, but I think it's complicated based off the work that you may or may have not done on yourself. So let's talk about the cognitive aspect, because at 18 years old, I would say that you're not grown, and you're not grown because your form of mind has not.
Did it just happen for you?
Did what just happen for me?
And like, based off of like the things that you learned, are you now just not grown? Like, have you seen anything different in the past, or have you felt anything different in the past that at 18 you're not grown?
So I, just like you, I got exposed to like different things. I see people, I'm like, you ain't put your kids out yet. So that kind of started it for me. And then like with getting this training, like when I started to understand that people don't necessarily have like mental health issues because of just like their childhood or their past or their upbringing, right? When I started to understand like the role of a therapist is to support you through transitory issues that could plague your mental health, it started opening up my mind in that sense. Because if you at 18 and you got to jump right out, you don't have any understanding of bills, any real responsibility. Maybe it's you clean your room, you make sure you get up on time to go to school. And I thought about my own self, myself. But let me go back to this form of mind thing, right?
The cognitive
development, because cognitively you are not developed, meaning the mindset of an 18-year-old, you're just coming from that phase to where you really think that the world revolves around you, meaning the only thing that matters is like your needs. If you think about our children today, right? They don't understand that like you have to work. So when they say, hey, can you come and eat lunch with me? Like just come tomorrow. The only thing they care about is if you come to eat lunch with them. And that is based off of their form of mind. Like the only thing that matters is them. When you get to 18, you kind of understand that other people have other things to do, but you still don't necessarily care. You don't really understand like the mysteries of the world, or like what makes life so complicated. It's still very so much like black and white. There's a clear cause for like A equals B to you. So I would say from a cognitive standpoint, and I think that what ends up happening is like if you are going to therapy like in your early 20s, that emotionally, like most people don't have a problem with expressing what their needs and wants are. Like they understand that you hurt me, you didn't do this, when you did this hurt my feelings. Now maybe you need to learn how to verbalize those things and understand that it's okay to have those emotions, but you have to be able to transition a person out of their world. Like you cannot, part of growing as an adult is you can't remain the same, the main subject.
Okay. So that's where we're going with this.
Yeah.
That's how you know when you're an adult, is when the world opens up. It's no longer about just you, your needs, your wants, the way that you see things. It's more so the bigger picture.
Right, whatever the bigger picture is. Because the other thing now, and we always talk about this, right, is I read in a book one time, it said that was two separate books, but everything that you add to your life adds on some level of imprisonment. And I was like, dang, that's really, really interesting, because the way that you think about it is, it's not so much that you're adding adulthood into your life, because that just comes, but like if you get an apartment or if you decide to start dating, like all of those things are additional responsibilities. And what ends up happening is we have to start to understand ourselves in relation to finances, responsibility, dating, relationships. And here's the other thing too, because it's one of my, I think I don't know if I said it before, but knowledge isn't all, information isn't always knowledge, and knowledge isn't always wisdom. So when I think about that, like there's a lot of information out there, and if you can't interpret it in order to support you to get to like the best version of yourself, like life will continue to still feel very, very much so hard.
Right. I believe so. So what are some of the things that like happen for you cognitively when like you are walking into adulthood? Like what are some examples, and how, you know what, because adulthood is about other people, what might other people see or may not experience going into adulthood, like to develop cognitively in adulthood? I don't know I know the question I want to ask, but are you getting me? What might other people experience cognitively going into adulthood, or not? Like what could stop their development there, I guess, is what I'm trying to get into.
So problem solving, your ability to make decisions. We already know emotional intelligence, because we hear organizations, everybody saying like your EI low, they got a low level of emotional intelligence. We're going to put that to the side for a second. But how do you approach life when it comes to making decisions, your critical thinking abilities? That stuff is what really matters.
So what I guess what supports adolescents in problem solving?
The truth is, like, what problem solving they're not doing a lot because they still have us to really rely on. If you think about it, like there's a conditioning that once you get a certain age, like that you're grown, right? Mm-hmm. And kids don't necessarily have that understanding that like I'm grown, so they still have an expectation from us. So for children, I think that it's on a much smaller scale, right? Let's just say Hakeem and Kaden are fighting, right? You know, last week they were out on the soccer field and they were fighting.
Right.
And let them resolve it. Like if nobody's going to die or anything, like let them resolve it, because that does allow them to exercise their critical thinking abilities and their decision-making abilities. Because let's just say Hakeem say, Kaden, I'm never going to play with you again because of X, right? Hakeem is going to start thinking, well, I love my cousin. I want to play with you. So
right.
What do I need to do differently in order to have that relationship?
Okay. So it is not only adolescence, but your whole life.
Your whole life.
And
the difference is it gets more complicated though. Like if you think about our friendship, right? When we life gets busy.
It does.
If I don't pick up the phone and call you for 2 to 3 weeks, we could do a couple things like push it under the rug. Quail don't have time for me. Whatever the case may be, right? And then that
if you didn't call me for 2 to 3 weeks, I would come to your house. Like,
see, I'm glad that you said that.
Girl, I'm gonna be on your doorstep, probably with a knife. Like,
but at this point, you understand that life be lifing though. Like, if Quail didn't call me for 2 weeks,
no,
like,
I would
understand.
know. You got kids, you got a husband, you know, you got your business, you got work, you got, a gazillion of things.
Right.
However, don't play with me.
Right. I probably would do the same thing. Come to your office, do whatever I need to do to be like, girl, what's up? Like, let's at least just talk about it.
You all right?
But you would see that, like, not being able to step outside of what your own needs were,
right,
and consider my needs would present a challenge in our friendship.
Right.
And the older that we get, like, kids easily make friends. Like, the older we get, it's a little bit harder because we start to really like wear masks and all those other things because we're managing the expectations of so many roles.
Right.
You know the thing. So like that's one aspect of it. But I don't really like to talk about that aspect. You know, the one that really gets me is go ahead. What would you say?
I guess you don't like to talk about that aspect, but I think it's important. One, as parents too, because if we're always jumping in there, like to save our kids or to fix things for them, how do they grow up to be able to fix things for themselves?
Right. To
or
exercise that.
If you always have to do as I say, and you never have a voice, right? Then how do you truly make decisions as an adult?
It makes me think about this whole gentle parenting concept too, right? Because, everybody wants to. A lot of us are now saying, like, I want to hear how you feel, right? And I guess we're filling in the gaps from an emotional development standpoint, but you still want to be flexing or exercising those other muscles for your kids.
Right.
Based off of where they are, age and all those things. But being able to find the balance because, cultivating resilience starts very early on. Mm-hmm. Like, I can be here and support you and support your emotional needs, but you don't want to forget about those other boxes because a lot of research is saying that we are in over our heads. And this is my own opinion that I've formed. I think that we are in over our heads because people are not looking at whole people in that sense and thinking about what you need to do in order, like what's needed in order to approach life.
So do you feel like maybe people are too gentle these days with their children?
Because it's coming from a scarcity mindset.
Everything. If we look at a subset of adults today, it's all about therapy. Mm-hmm. It's all about let's go get heard, let's go get seen, let's go. Somebody need to check in on me and my emotions and my feelings. So in turn, you are raising children that are emotional kids.
Highly sensitive.
Highly emotional children.
But here's the other thing about that, because at the age of 7, kids start to understand that they have complex emotions too. And they start to hide their emotions from their parents. So I think that the emotional development, it's about creating the space for the emotions to be there because you can't force people to tell you like how they feel.
Right.
Like, because Caden is really good at it. So he'd be like, Mom, I really don't feel like talking about it. Can we just leave it? Like, but I understand that Caden is 8 years old, but he also knows that if I come back the next day, like, Mom, I want to talk about that. Like, that's the space that you want to create. It's not about like getting them stuck in that form of mind that like,
that we gotta address your feelings and we gotta address them right now.
Yeah, or like that's the subset of living a healthy and productive life as an adult. That's just a piece of it, a very small piece of it.
Okay, let's move on to the next piece.
Okay, so this is the piece that gets me really excited. Is So the form of mind that we were just talking about was like a sovereign mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's this socialized mindset that really gets me, that really gets me. Because it says, and I even see it in myself, like, so granted, you can have these forms of mind and it not be on like maybe you're more developed when it comes to like friendships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're more developed when it comes to your career, but when it comes to like your children, like you're not quite there, or like it could, because it varies, right? It doesn't mean that your whole life means that this is a representation of your mindset.
Right.
But the socialized mindset gets me because it says that like most adults never exit out of it.
I mean,
this is like 70% of the adult population falls within the socialized mindset.
Questions, what is the socialized mindset? I mean, I know we mentioned it on the show before, but what is the socialized mindset?
So socialized mindset is, I'm gonna give an example because the one thing that stands out to me is, say for instance you're going to the doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the doctor tells you like you need to do A, B, C, D, E. And there's something inside of you that says that doesn't necessarily feel right. But you don't question it because this is a doctor. This person has went to school for this. They have the education, they have the knowledge, they have the expertise.
Right.
And what ends up happening is, rather than exercising your own voice, you follow the advice of experts. If you hear people say, and I've been guilty of it too, like when people, based on my experience or what my therapist said, was that's usually a form of socialized mindset. Even today, when we hear people like the whole rest culture.
The who culture?
When people are saying like you need to take time to rest and like find living like she like what? Don't nobody want to work anymore.
Who's
because
the culture? Rest culture.
The rest culture. I don't know. It's something like that.
Baby, I ain't found them yet. But keep going.
Well, it's a lot of people that saying that don't let these jobs burn you out. Take time to rest, heal, do whatever it is that you need to do. And what ends up happening is, because you have fell into, it's like, these jobs don't care anything about you. Life is short. And what ends up happening is people no longer know how to find the balance because this is the way to go. Like culture is saying this is the way to go now. And you can't really step outside of that because it's like, there's so much to validate. Like COVID has validated a lot of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like make sure you take time for yourself. Make sure that you're exercising self-care, whatever it may be. But you need to figure out, let's just say you got some big goals, right?
Right.
Like you're trying to do something. Maybe this is not the season for you to be resting, but if you have gotten that voice of like the community or I don't know, culture today, it's going to be very hard to figure out like what does it mean, the balance in it. And I don't think a lot of people recognize that. Even from a therapy standpoint, I absolutely can't stand when people tell me my therapist said, like when people say me like, well, I told somebody my therapist or my coach said, don't tell nobody that, baby. Like because I really want to hear what you think. You need to be able to run things through your own internal judgment system. I even see it people with their kids, like they have gotten, and I get it, right? Because people they want to set their children up for success. But even when it comes to like parenting your children, people can't think outside of the box in that sense because, therapists or the mental health community, right, says that this is the way that you raise kids. This is the right thing to do. And what ends up happening is every time you turn around, they say, okay, well, let me pull this tool out of my bag because this will support them with this.
Okay.
And it feels like you're listening to your inner voice, but it's really not your inner voice.
So the socialized mindset is more so just you going along with what society says, what culture says. And you figure out a way to mesh into that. And you never,
it feels right, though. It feels right because most people think that, so when we say socialized, like let's think about you go to college, you get married, you get a house. We understand that, right? Like now let me start thinking for myself. Maybe my parents, they work hard and they were never present for their children, right? So now we say, okay, it is really important to be present. I always say the question to ask yourself is, am I making this decision based off of what someone else said or what's popular today?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Right. Right. I mean, I guess. What do you mean?
So let's say, it makes me think about one of my girlfriends that I was talking to, and she's really big on gentle parenting. Her son had like punched her recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she does not believe in putting her hands on her kids, but she was like, I needed to let him know. Like she did decide to pop him.
Mm-hmm.
Now she felt some internal conflict, right? Because she too had gotten caught up in the socialized mindset that this is the right way to raise children. Like you don't put your hands on your kids, right?
Right.
And as I listened to her, like normally you can tell is when you start to feel some type of internal conflict, like right versus wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing was wrong about what she did. It wasn't like she had abused him or something. You can't put your hands on me. And it made me laugh because she said, I usually tell my kids that your hands are for like love.
Right.
And love is not a representation of that. But because we're basing a lot of things off of what the culture was previously, spoiled. What is it?
Spare the rod.
Spare the rod, spoil the child, right? Now, there's a new way of doing things. And what ends up happening is everybody ends up falling into the new way of doing things and don't usually think outside of the box when it comes to something different. For example, I guess I could take the same approach from a mental health standpoint, but I always felt some internal conflict.
So what are the issues that people are dealing with today where they normally fall into like these socialized mindsets? Like what are the big ones, right? Parenting, that's one thing, right?
Parenting
because, people want to be the best parents they can. So why not do what everybody else is doing? But what are the other things? I mean, religion, that is a hard one, baby.
No, religion. We had Nikki on the podcast, and religion is a form of a community.
Right. And I mean, I love what Nikki said because I truly believe that you need to find things that really support you mentally and that you can live with.
Nikki's response
was beautiful.
To that represented a different form of mind, which is self-authoring.
Right.
And the population from an adulthood standpoint is people rarely reach that stage because they get stuck in the socialized part.
So what if people get stuck in socialized mindset, but they identify as like a Nikki, how may that show up?
In some ways, suppressing yourself. So let me think about it for a second, right? Because one of my clients just came up in my head. So his mom is very religious. I don't have him anymore, but his mom is extremely religious. He goes to church. But he identifies within the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm.
He loves his mom. He wants to have a relationship with his mom. But it's like, do I choose who I am or do I choose religion? Because this religion here is like the most important thing. And what ends up happening is you start to suppress your emotions in some way. You start to suppress your needs in some way because right now you're only focused on the greater good. And what ends up happening is it does prevent you from living out loud. I would say when people say like be authentically who you are, part of being authentic is being vulnerable, right?
Right.
So it doesn't really open up the space for vulnerability in a lot of ways. Another way that it looks is, let's just say this client that I'm talking about, right? One of their friends come over and do something like what my grandma would say, like, you need to find a wife. You start to feel some internal conflict because do you get to mistreat people because they decide to live a certain way? So there are two things you can decide to do. Some people may say, you know what, like I understand my grandmother or my mom's perspective, and it's okay for her to have that, but it's not okay for you to mistreat people. And I think that a lot of people, because like religion is just still a resource. It's a guide. Like it is not like literally the Bible for my life.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to mistreat a Nikki because she chooses to live her life a certain way, especially when it's not causing any harm for me.
Right. I mean, I think those are misinterpretations anyway. But
you look like I kind of want to talk about religion, but I don't really want to talk about religion. But religion is that's a big one.
I mean, I definitely get that. That's a big one. I think that for my daily life, I am in the socialized mindset when it comes to religion.
How so? What
because
makes you
I'm
feel
going,
like you have that form of mind as it relates to religion?
Because I'm going with the crowd, right? Like Jesus died on the cross for us, and amen. Like that is what makes me say my mindset is socialized. However, I do understand that the way that some of those things have been taught are misinterpretations, which is why I'll go back into that.
Well, that's
Bible.
what it comes about. Like, the socialized mindset is about asking, like, what assumptions am I willing to challenge? What beliefs am I willing to challenge? What ideologies am I willing to challenge? What ideas am I willing to challenge? And some things.
Well, in the socialized mindset, people is not challenging those things.
No, because it very much so feels right. It very, like, say for instance, another thing, because you just said religion is one, right?
It could feel right?
Yeah, it could.
But there could also be a level of
don't know that it, like, most of the time when you feel like when you start to feel like it's conflicting with another value of yours, 9 times out of 10 it probably falls within the socialized mindset.
Okay.
That's usually what ends up happening, because I just thought about it from a career standpoint, right? Let's talk about the people that work for these large organizations like a Facebook and a Google and some of those places. Girl, when they be laying their asses off, it really has an impact on their mental health, because they were like it's almost like they're a part of a cult, like the Apple, like they follow the community. They've been treated very well. And what you don't realize is it's a part of life. It's a part of doing business.
Right. Well,
so now you've
for
done
me,
wrong.
it's those attachments, right? You getting too attached to something based on another thing, right?
But we can get attached to religion.
Right.
We can get attached to how you should raise your kids, how you should be as a wife, how you should be as a professional. And do you have any type of attachments in that sense? It 9 times out of 10, you're probably within that socialized mindset. I'm gonna tell you why that just scares the shit out of me, because I want to be walking to my own beat and drums. Right?
Okay.
I don't want to get so caught up on my internal judgment system that I can't hear other things, but because there are pros and cons to every form of mind, right? That's just life. But even if I sat here and said, like, see, in adulthood, the only thing that you need to really focus on is adult development, because you're an adult. I mean, I believe that to some degree, but I also understand that people have stories that originated before they came children. So, it's being able to find a balance too. Like, I'm not going to be all here in childhood, and I'm not going to be all here in adult development, because it is about meeting people where they are. Right. But I do think that people really need to start questioning, like, what communities and beliefs am I following that may not necessarily align up with who I am or who I want to be? One of the things that come to my mind is, like, quitting jobs. Like, people will quit a job now. Adults.
Right.
Not thinking about any responsibility.
But 30 years ago, like, that shit was unheard of. Like, people
But that was the norm then.
In jobs, they wanted to get their pension. They wanted to, like, retire. They wanted,
Right, but that was the norm. So, again, socialized mindset, that's another form of what it looked like. Nothing stays the same. Society is always evolving, transforming. So now the new norm is quit that job. Forget that job.
Right.
And what ends up happening is, if you've gotten so caught up in that too, maybe you feel good in the moment, but them bills still coming around the corner. Your kids might still need things, and I am guilty.
I did a post, honestly, probably a few months back that was like, quitting jobs ain't for everybody. Somebody, like, there are people out there who want to continuously get your paycheck, and it's okay with that. Like, right. It's okay for you to do that. Am I saying shut off your dreams? Am I saying not do, like, the things that you want to do? No. But I'm saying, like, if quitting your job don't feel right to you, don't do it because society says everybody should be quitting right now. But it normally
does feel right. Like, when I decided to quit that job in 2021, which is, I tell you, was the hardest decision that I made.
You did not quit your job because everybody else was quitting jobs. I had a lot
of coaching, though. But you think about, remember the first time that I had quit my job, though?
But it had nothing to do with the second time society.
Which is why I feel good today. But I mean, there were some effects from that. But you remember the first time that I quit my job?
That still didn't have anything to do with society.
You're a lie.
Okay, what did society tell you? Because one people is not quitting like that.
Say what?
In 2016, people were not just quitting
that represents
jobs.
Another form of mine, because it was all about my own needs. I was not able to see the perspective of a CEO, other people. Like, that represent. I wasn't even at a socialized mindset then. I wasn't even there at that point. I was still probably like what you would see the form of mind from an adolescent. Like, you know, like I'm just working at Taco Bell and you just decide to say, you know what, I'm going to go get me a job somewhere else. You don't think about anything else. It's very impulsive.
Okay.
So that's a different form of mind. But the point to that was I was already a mom. I was already a wife. And my mindset was still
adolescent.
Well,
what is it called? The sovereign
mindset, imperial mindset, whatever you want to call it. But that's a really good point, right? Because it shows that I don't know, I was 25, 26 years old, 27 maybe.
Right.
That I wasn't cognitively developed to deal with some of the things that I was seeing with having a seat at the table.
Right. So
you processing that, ain't you?
I was for a sec.
Yeah. Tell me what I guess what just came to your mind?
So I guess emotion. That's still very emotional based, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you're making decisions based off of you.
Yeah, because the world is very black and white. When I quit that job, I didn't understand.
It was black and white. It was right and wrong.
It was right and wrong.
It was good and bad.
It was good and bad, like, because you don't treat people like that.
Right.
Like, but when you realize, like, I mean, at some point, I mean, even you would say that I mistreated you with being your boss at some point, but I didn't understand that. Like, I just really didn't understand.
I would not say that you mistreated
Girl,
me.
you gave me
and I am going to, like, go on record saying that I would not say that she mistreated me. But
well, that's because cognitively you probably have developed a little bit more. So you were able now today.
Oh, I'm going to still say the same shit about what I said, because what I said is what I said.
What? Okay, so let's go back to let's talk about that for a second, because I want to know what was your form of mind when you had gotten upset with what. Okay, so let me tell y'all the story. So I had wrote Sierra up. Y'all probably heard it on another podcast where we talked about it, and she was really, really upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you believe your form of mind was about how you felt about what I had done?
Socialized, very socialized.
Socialized?
Friends don't do that to friends.
So the other thing about these forms of mind is normally we think we're higher than what we are.
I mean, you can pick it. You can pick it based off of your judgment.
Okay, I think it's adolescent.
But I think that when we say socialize, my things was friends don't do that to friends.
That's like, one part. So that's friendship.
So right, that's because friendship. that was the only basis.
Oh, okay.
That was the only basis for how I felt. Outside of that, everything outside of that, I was very, like, taking accountability.
Part of the thing with socialized mindset is you can understand others' perspectives too. You might not just agree with it.
I definitely understood.
Okay. I'm processing as I'm listening to you. I could see how that could fall into the socialized realm, because I do remember you saying at some point like you felt that was what you needed to do, but the internal conflict was still, but we're friends, like you could have took a better approach, and that created more internal conflict than anything. Because I understand, like, you have this role, you have this job, but we're also friends over here. Did it have to? I could see that. I could see that.
Right.
Go on, set me straight.
I'm not trying to.
No. It's a good point.
I just think that a lot of times, like, we could think that it feel like it's coming from somewhere else, right? But it could really be something else. And I think because I have been so vocal about it, I mean, I guess that's where my socialized, like another place where I'm very socialized, right? How people treat family, how people treat friends, how people like I have, I guess, hard values around those, right? Mm-hmm. And if, when things happen that conflict that, I end up feeling a lot of conflict. Right. So that is my socialized mindset, right? Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. I didn't lost my train of thought, because we talked about religion. We kind of just talked about friendship.
Right.
We started to talk about
and I was still being her friend, y'all.
I know
clearly we're here.
Right. Clearly we're here. But I think that what has happened is you've redefined what friendship, and I think that for all of our friendship, it's always been tested in that sense, like redefining what friendship looks like and means based off of where we are and where we are in life. You ain't redefined. You still stuck there.
Have I redefined friendship? So let me wipe my eyes.
It's not even about redefining.
So let me tell you something.
So the highest form of adult development is being able to hold multiple perspectives.
Right. There we go. I'm not redefining anything, right? Because I love how I love. Point blank period. Okay. Right? But I also understand that life is transitory. Mm-hmm. So in that, I can be comfortable in who I show up as and not expect and not have expectations that come with that.
Right.
And when they do, I'm able to eventually go back and kind of check those things, and hopefully I can check them along the way.
Right. I didn't feel like we closed out on the career part.
Okay,
right?
Let's go there.
Because like faith without work is dead. Like that's what kind of comes to my mind. And like today,
is that the socialized part? Like what? Faith without works is dead.
That could be, because it's what are you following? Like, are you willing to challenge that as well? Because most of us struggle with work-life balance, or just balance, period, is because we get caught up in that form of mind. There's no balance with that mindset.
I guess based off of what that means to you.
Right.
Like what does faith without works is dead mean to you? And I think that's the biggest thing about life, success, any form of mine, is like really defining. There's going to be periods where you have to work.
There's going to be periods where you can sit down and fruit still show up in your life. That's what that means to.
Amen.
That's what that means to me. Like,
amen.
So that's what that means. But some people, like my grandma, like she comes from a time where it was all faith, and then like, you poor, like that was her following like religion strictly. Like, this is the community, this is what you do. And I think that it's important, because if we want to be able to feel like we're living fulfilling, balanced lives, and you can do life with ease, mm-hmm. like we have to come out of that form of mind. But most people don't necessarily understand it though. Because even me, you remember when we had first a while back, you were like, well, when you going to start talking about that? I was like, girl, I'm still like processing it myself and trying to make sense out of it. Because even me, I was challenging my own assumptions and beliefs about what I believe to be true. And I always say that most of the things that we say, it is only true because we believe that it's true. Right. Like anything can be challenged. And that is, to me, that's a representation of being grown, right? When you start to understand that anything that you say can be challenged, you start to open up your world to hear other things and you're not necessarily shutting things out. Like when I tell people like I don't like people get way thrown off of that because they're like, no, mental health is important. Well, that's not what I said. I said I don't like therapy. I never said that therapy was not good. It's not beneficial, that you should not try it. But because mental health is just this big thing now, people don't realize that they have gotten caught up in that and they just follow that blindly.
Right. And that's not the only way to heal.
Right. And I think what ends up happening is you end up living in like a subpar life. Like life is good, but life could always be better.
Right.
Now that doesn't mean that you get to the point where you get caught up on like self-development, you obsessed with it. But you know what I'm trying to say, girl. You know what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think that at every step in adulthood, we need to be defining what it is. Like, because if not, we will end up in socialized, sovereign. Like, what does it mean to me? How you gonna jump in there?
So I tell you what just came to my mind. Like when you said like defining what it means, development is not linear, right? Because our journeys are totally different.
But open to that changing, right? Because I'm not saying this definition is sticking, right? Because things happen in life and you experience new things. And what once meant XYZ to you may now mean something else. And we know that as adults because on our journey as adults, when we first came here, success looked one way. And now today's success, we would say it has a whole different meaning, right? But if you're constantly asking yourself those questions, you are more so defining and being that guide for yourself versus allowing the world to
I'm going to talk about, a
story.
What just came to my mind is because we don't being within the Black community, fall very much so within, can fall into socialized mindset. And I would tell you...
When she be getting into self-authoring, y'all, I be like,
What?
Oh, shit. Where she going?
Wait, why you say that when I be getting into self-authoring? Well, I'll tell you what did it for me. Because you remember I told you what sent me to therapy. Out of all the stuff, that Ahmaud Arbery thing sent me to therapy. Because I was just like... This I just can't understand it. I can't process it.
Right.
Like I literally could see my own son like running and that happening. But I also was like, I'm also tired of feeling like that. Like I'm also, because I understand that there's like the good and bad, the polarity of things. Now, being in position of power, because you remember, how do I say? So I'm trying to figure out how I want to.
I'm
just say
Go ahead and say it.
Because I was mad as hell. Like I was furious. And working for my uncle, I had a lot of power. My heart, like I felt that I wanted to go in and fire every white person that I could because I was just that angry. But that's not who I am.
Right.
So I was feeling a lot of conflict. So much so that I think that we did end up firing somebody like that following week. And I was conflicted about it because, I mean, I had my own opinion around it, but...
It was not based on color, age, or religion.
Right.
It
wasn't...
it
wasn't based off of those things. But what I'm saying is doing that should have given me a sense of like gratification. But it did not because that's not who I am as a person. Like, but I also understood like... It put into, everything isn't about race. Sometimes it really is about power. And we can get so caught up in our own world that we don't even realize like how we're moving. And then we talked about it, right? Some people do things out of like, power, for example. But to me, I challenge myself from a Black standpoint too. Like, what beliefs, assumptions am I attached to because I'm within the Black community? Because some of those things can prevent you from growing.
Okay. I like that you challenge yourself from a Black standpoint. I mean, you talked about that before. I mean, when you said you weren't wanting to like tell your son, okay, he's 8 years old. Oh, you a Black boy. You don't.
No, I don't teach
like,
that.
You don't want to teach that one because it don't feel right.
No, it doesn't feel.
There are some people in power out there who can rewrite that narrative, right?
Right. So I guess, what did I challenge? Like, what does it mean to be a Black mom? Does it mean that I have to remind him every single day that you're basking in like Black joy and this is what it looks like? No, I'm not doing that, because like, joy is your birthright. Like, I don't want to send the message that
Black is his birthright too.
Yeah, that is his. I mean, it is. He's Black, but that is one part of who he is.
Right.
Like, I always think about like your I am statements. Like, today, my I am statements are very different than what they were. Like, I am a mom, I am a daughter, I am a wife. Like, none of those titles fall. Like, I try to focus my I am statements on like, I am love, like I am kindness. I am compassion, I am gratitude, and allow those things to lead me instead of like
the titles.
The titles or these identities, because those identities are always evolving. Right. Like, if I am love, if I am compassion, if I am gratitude, like,
I'm that in all things.
I'm that in all things.
Just as a mom or just as a wife or
girl, that has served me. Like,
I think that's beautiful.
That has really served me. So when I parent and challenging like my Black narratives, like, that's what I'm hoping is showing up, because my kids are not exempt from experiencing life either. I don't know what that's gonna look like for them.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be an adult?
To be well, first of all, I think that education is important in the sense of being open to learning like new concepts. Mm-hmm. So it's the curiosity mindset. A lot of people say growth mindset, but I say being curious, right? Always being willing to challenge these assumptions and beliefs that you have, especially ones that feel so right, like to your core.
Okay.
That's one aspect of it. And I think it don't really mean like a whole lot. Like, it's ultimately it's what you make it. It's understanding that life doesn't have to be hard because you are an adult. And I think that if you start to open up your mind to things such as that, like, you'll be able to walk into adulthood, or what we will refer to as like conscious, a much more conscious person, or start to feel like you're truly self-transforming. Like, all of the noise that's happening outside, like, you become less and less and less and less unbothered.
Okay.
Like, I really, you remember like there was one when we talk about like the fruits of the spirit? Right. I really, really feel that today. Like, it's very, because I had a moment the other week where I was like, I'm gonna quit this job because I don't like, but I got
a new job.
Yeah, I felt like that the other day. Okay. And last week. But it was the emotional aspect of it, right? And because I would say that I'm emotionally intelligent, mm-hmm. I was able to sort of lean in and not say, like, every time something doesn't look right or feel good to me, it doesn't mean that I have to run, or if I feel like I'm not living in my purpose. That's the biggest thing, because I feel like God has a huge calling on my life. Right. I don't necessarily know what it is, but I also know that culture says, like, that's culture, right? Like, follow your purpose. Like, and I did a post the other day, like, don't let anybody push you into purpose, because we create and assign meaning for every season of life that we're in. Right. So for me, I can get like, following your purpose is a part of the socialized mindset, because to some degree it could leave you feeling discontent. in a lot of ways.
Right. And I definitely say don't allow people to force you to put your crown on too soon, right? Because you have to walk, the walk to have the experience to be able to uphold that crown, right?
Right.
So yeah, at your own pace.
Right. And what you don't get in your 30s, there's opportunity for you to get it in your 40s. I think that adulthood requires a lot of grace. I just think it's about being open, and we always talk about getting attached to things. Like, if you didn't get it in your 20s, you can get it in your 30s. If you didn't get it in your 30s, you can get it in your 40s. My idea, like, it's never too late.
You remember we were in a coaching program, and our subject was if an 80-year-old man came to coaching, and he wanted to be a boxer, right?
Right. I do.
My black and white mindset, right? It says that let's follow the rules of coaching. But there was someone else who was there, and they was like,
I don't remember.
Well, she was going with what life says. Hell no, you can't be no boxer at 80. But basically where I was going was, you're never too old and that's what coaching says too. You're never too old to get it.
You're never too old to get it.
Yeah.
You're never too old to get it. And I think that I'm going to look in the camera for this, because there is, even as you listen to me talk about like what adult development is, there's somebody that's going to listen to this episode to say that I need to understand exactly what you're talking about. I would say open up your mind and be curious about it, but don't apply pressure to you for you to get it. If you're still in that phase of where you're developing yourself emotionally, take that time to do that. Like, I continue to say, there's no right or wrong way to doing life. I think that if we start to talk about like what it means to be grown and defining it based off of maturity, and even the things that we're talking about right now, there's a lot of room for judgment. And right. I always say that one of my beliefs, who am I to judge? Like, I really, really do feel that way, but I also enjoy educating people. Right. Like, so that you feel like you have several things that you can pull from when life starts to feel hard. And that's what this conversation was about. Like, if adulthood still feels hard in some way, if you still feel like it could be better, that you can be maneuvering adulthood with much more ease, I'm telling you that there's another solution that you could be looking at. I'm not saying it's going to be the be all, but it may just provide you other possibilities that you didn't necessarily know was available to you. So I say with anything that you're listening to, take it with a grain of salt. Challenge what we're saying. If you have questions, you want us to talk about different things, you can email us at info@successiscomplicated, or just follow us on Instagram @successiscomplicated. Did you want to add anything, C?
No, not to that. I think we're all grown up here now. No, I'm just kidding, y'all. We're
still growing,
right? We're
and that's the thing. We're all still growing. All right, y'all, we're done. We'll see y'all next week. If you have not listened to the other episodes, I encourage you to go and check out those episodes. And until next time, we're out.